Hi everyone, and welcome to the weekly predictions based on astrology for the week of June 17th, 2019. First, let's quickly recap the predictions and what had happened for the previous week, the week of June 10th. My predictions as far as the stock market directions were that the market will be going down, that the market would go down for all the days except Tuesday. In reality, the predictions were correct for 2 days of the week, Wednesday and Friday, when the markets primarily went down. On Monday, the prediction was wrong, where the market went up, actually. And then on Tuesday and Thursday, the prediction was off, but the market pretty much didn't really make a lot of moves, meaning that pretty much the indexes were hovering a little bit above around the zero. So I could do better, but it wasn't, I guess. Hi everyone, and welcome to the weekly astrology predictions for the week of June 17th. First, let's quickly recap the predictions for the previous week and what had happened. So my predictions for the stock market for the previous week were that the market will be pretty much going down for all the days except Tuesday, where I thought that the market might go up. And the market did go down for 2 days of the week, Wednesday and Friday. On Monday, I thought it was going to go down. It actually went up. And then for 2 days of the week, Tuesday and Thursday, the direction overall technically was wrong, but the actual move was very small, and indexes were hovering around basically 0% change. Then the several ongoing predictions that I had running were one was based basically on the Neptune square Jupiter, where the focus, I was expecting that the focus in the news would be on things like pharmaceuticals, chemicals, oil, navy, religion, and water, etc. And some of the news of note were that the opioid drug maker Incess Therapeutics filed for bankruptcy. Then, although it wasn't last week, but rather Monday, 6/17th, the news came up that Pfizer is looking to buy cancer treatment innovator Array Biopharma for $11 billion. So that's a fairly large news. And again, this aspect that I just mentioned, Neptune square Jupiter, is going to be in place for another couple of weeks. So the same prediction applies to the current week as well. Then we also had some increasing news about the Ebola epidemic in Africa. And I would say there may be a flare both in the month of June as well as in September. We also had some news about bad weather that involved excessive rains, specifically in India. There were some evacuations of hundreds of thousands in the wake of upcoming cyclone that luckily ended up not actually landing on the shore because it had the weekend before landing. But then in early last week in central and southern China, thousands of people were stranded and a few people got killed amid the torrential rains there. Then there are also some news both in Iran and also in Russia about oil tankers. Basically, either there was a blast in like Russia and Makhachkala where 3 people were missing after that, and of course there are 2 oil tankers in Iran that had also, there's some ongoing debate who's at fault, but regardless, the essence of the news, the explosion, Mars, and on the tankers, on the water tankers that are specifically oil tankers, that's Neptune, that definitely fits the ongoing transits. And there was also news on the 11th of June that there were 6 people who died in fire in Ukraine psychiatric clinic. And again, if you think about astrologically, psychiatric clinic is something that is basically falls under domain of Neptune, and dying in the fire, especially fire, it's Mars. So just a different sort of manifestation of the same aspects. And we did have last week at that time, Mars conjuncting North Node, so some important public event that had to do with Mars, again explosions, fire, attacks, and Mars was in the water sign of Cancer, trining Neptune in another water sign of Pisces. So with influence of Neptune, again, that's what kind of brings you the either oil or navy or psychiatric clinic or pharmaceuticals. And sort of that's the, definitely there are quite a few manifestations. And Jupiter square Neptune kind of emphasized things, bringing more of such events. And that is something that will be, the aspect and this influence will continue into, like I said, another week or two. So similar types of events can be expected for the week of June 17th as well. Another ongoing influence that will be in place the week of June 17th and also the following week, and was in place certainly the week of June 10th, was Saturn conjuncting Pluto in Capricorn. And some of the expected manifestations were, especially by being triggered by opposition from Mars and Mercury, the increase of strong earthquakes, various disastrous accidents, attacks, also like older leaders either losing power, passing away, being replaced, stepping down, etc. And indeed there were some, quite a few actually, earthquakes that were 5 on a scale, I guess Richter scale, strength 5 and above. In particular, there was a 7.2 earthquake in New Zealand, and New Zealand, as I mentioned, actually my annual predictions was one of the areas that may experience increase in earthquakes this year in general, especially large ones. And we have seen some attacks there as well, which again indicates that that's the sort of one of the countries or the areas on the planet that may be susceptible to this Saturn conjunct Pluto transit more than some other areas. There was also a 4.0 earthquake in Ohio in the US, and again 4.0 maybe is not that strong of an earthquake in general, but because it was a shallow earthquake in a populated area, that obviously that was significant in that sense. There were also additional rather increased news about various transportation accidents. On the 15th of June, actually there on the same day there were multiple accidents involving airplanes. At the Polish air show, plane had crashed, killing the pilot, and in US and New York airport, tires had blown up on the United jet landing. Luckily, there were no injuries. And similarly with Pluto conjuncting Saturn, I was expecting kind of increased, and this is something that will continue into 2020. It's just that again, last week we had, and also continue into week of June 17th, additional sort of aspects from a slower, faster moving planets would trigger kind of more specific events. And so, like I said, increase of global tensions, significant events that may affect sort of geopolitical, relationships and relationships and partnerships among various countries, as well as potentially, like I said, spread of some contagious disease, something that again is on a large scale, larger than, something that happens annually, some flu outbreak, and potentially mudslides, volcano eruptions, etc. So we obviously have quite a few sort of ongoing situations going on between like US and China. There are some tensions obviously, and China's looking to update its rare earths policy. I guess is it a retaliation? But again, from the astrology perspective, it is interesting because rare earths, something to do with, again, Saturn, and Saturn right now is in Capricorn with Pluto. Pluto means like change, drastic change, and also it means relates to things that are being kind of excavated, retrieved from deep in the earth. So it definitely could transpire. But again, the positive outcome of this could be that US can come up with some alternatives that actually would be benefiting it in the long run. So similarly, other kind of events that relate to like tensions, geopolitical tensions, where there's some large explosion in Damascus, Syria on June 15th. There was also some news I saw about Turkish pilots being grounded from F-35 training. Again, some tensions with the US over sale of some Russian air defense system. And of course, as I mentioned before, Ebola epidemic in Africa. It's not necessarily something that hasn't happened before, but it is definitely something to keep an eye on, because again, right now, June and then September is certainly a ripe time for any sort of epidemics to be spiking and spreading more than, one would expect. I also predicted, as I said, problems for sort of people in power who either were in power for a long time, or they're elder leaders, secretive leaders who are prominent spies, or some hackers like mafia bosses, gang leaders, etc. Again, this has to do with Saturn being sort of the leader, like an elderly, established, conservative leader, somebody who has a lot of sort of authority. But Pluto, at the same time, as I said, rules things that are like hidden, police, mafia, terrorism, etc. Or things are just hidden literally, physically. They're just lying kind of down below, there's crust or something like that. And so we did have some news. I also specifically said that there may be some news about governments or large corporations being hacked, or some secret info exposed. And last Monday, June 10th, we have news about US Customs and Border Protection, basically uncovering that photos of travelers and their license plates were exposed in a cyber attack. On June 11th, I saw there was a heading in the Market Watch website that Kim Jong-un's half-brother was reportedly a CIA source. And again, I have no idea whether it's true or not, but I'm just looking for sort of headlines, what's in the news, because whether or not the news is true these days, like there's some tweet or something, it may move the markets, or it may kind of sway opinions. Again, whether or not it's true, it's sort of secondary, but what comes up in the news is what I'm kind of looking for as far as confirmation for the predictions. And similarly, on the 11th of June, there was news about US formally asking UK to extradite WikiLeaks Assange. So again, Assange would also think about somebody who is a prominent person, who is either, if he's not a hacker himself, then he's dealing with some secrets, etc. So that again falls under Pluto-Saturn conjunction transit. Some more specific predictions for last week were for June 10th through 12th. I thought that there might be an important announcement related to weapons, military activities, leaders, fires, accidents, athletes, sports, etc. And that had to do with Mars being kind of transiting together with North Node, which has to do with Mars has to do with fire, sports, weapons, military. North Node brings popularity of being in a public crowded space. And again, they were trining Neptune for this sort of flavor of military or related to oil. Not military, but rather related to oil, navy, or religion, or addictions, or drugs and things of that nature. And so on the 10th of June, there was news about Boston Red Sox star David Ortiz being shot in Dominican Republic. Similarly, on the 10th, news came up that U.S. firearms distributor filed for bankruptcy. And as I mentioned, there were also news last week about oil tanker explosions, which again, oil tankers being sort of in the water have to do with Neptune, and explosions have to do with Mars. So another manifestation of this aspect that had transpired last week. Let's see, for the 14th of June, I made a prediction that there may be increased news not only about various attacks, disasters, but also specifically about increased clashes and protests that might likely have the be anti-government or anti-some large corporation. And in the US on the 13th, there were news about dozens of Memphis police officers injured after the fatal shooting sparked violent clashes. And as I said, police is also another sort of a profession that falls under Mars and Pluto. And these were the planets kind of, again, being strongly aspected at the time. And similarly, of course, ongoing protests in Hong Kong against the extradition bill, which has since been suspended, but the protests are continuing against the leadership, in Hong Kong. And as I said, like that is a slow aspect. The leadership, the established leadership, the established way of kind of leading, be it a large corporation or governments, will be undergoing changes through like 2020, but particularly June like 10th through the 23rd, these sort of leaders or established structures will be tested more than usual. And then again in September, we may have another wave of similar protests. Let's see, I also made prediction for June 14th through 15th, so that was weekend, I guess, or Friday through Saturday, that there might be important announcement about some communication or transportation businesses, including social media, phones, online sales, potentially about new device, service, project, or leader. I haven't really seen that, but then my prediction was that after that announcement, which would be initially positively received on the 16th, there might be sort of a backlash or problems associated with either some devices not working or problems with communication, delays, limited access, loss of connectivity. And what I did see, and that had to do with North Node, again, popularity affecting large groups of people, conjuncting Mercury, Mars, and opposing Saturn. So Saturn has to do with things that are slow and things can't really move forward. And something that's old and it's basically not working, either working really slowly or it's just literally so old that it no longer works and it breaks due to just, it's basically either being out of date or physically falling apart. And so we had news about Target experiencing payments, or rather outages in there, like payment associated with their payment registers going offline, and that happened on both 15th and 16th, even though supposedly there were two different reasons, but some technical issues in both cases. And on the 16th, there was also news about Argentina and Paraguay experiencing some nationwide blackouts that affected millions of people in those countries. So I didn't specifically make a prediction about blackouts of, say, electric power, but again, those tense aspects do often coincide with just major sort of energy that manifests through various like big, large-scale events, usually of problematic nature. And in this case, it was like a blackout and that affected large groups of people, but aspects continue to be stressful. And as I said, the slow-moving aspects will continue to be in place through 2020. So each time we'll have additional sort of other planets coming and aspecting them. We will continue having flare-ups of such events. And for the week of June 17th, this is the case again. And September of 2019 and then January of 2020 would be additional sort of hot periods of time where additional kind of a large-scale problems could be expected. Let's see, so the last prediction that I want to cover was for last week was for the US specifically, where there may be increased focus on military partnerships, aggressive international negotiations, as well as like weapons in general, engines, hot weather, accidents, fires, etc. And I specifically mentioned in my blog that there may be, we may hear about international expansion through sort of military bases, troops, or some large contracts involving weapons. And on Monday the 17th, actually, so not last week, but the first day of this week, I saw there was news about US sending 1,000 more troops to Middle East. So let's see, so for the week of June 16th, some of the ongoing predictions are basically the same as last week, so increased focus on pharmaceuticals, chemicals, navy, oil, wet weather, etc., and that will continue for a couple more weeks. So there may be problems such as gas leaks, problems with shipments, etc. Curiously, this week, at the end of the week, I would say Thursday through maybe Monday, the 23rd, there may be, or especially Friday, Saturday, Sunday, there will be increased focus on specifically oil and related products, or maybe some chemicals, and the value of those products may be definitely either would change or be questioned, and or there may be focus on religious figures, and again, that's more towards the weekend through like the 23rd. And my guess is that the value may go down because maybe there's disagreement. There would be disagreement, perhaps among the OPEC members or investors about the value of either products, services, or businesses related to those areas. Let's see. Another ongoing sort of a prediction is that sort of international agreements or laws that are put into place or agreements that are made until sort of August 12th may potentially then be revised. And again, not necessarily that they will be completely annulled and canceled, but rather they may be revised because certain information may be missed or details omitted, and certain revisions may need to take place after August 12th. As I said, there's this ongoing global influence between because of the transit between Pluto and Saturn, and that's in place through 2020. Let's see, that would be associated with everything that I just already mentioned, increased disasters, earthquakes, changes in sort of government leadership and leadership of corporations, sort of countries falling apart or joining together and completely changed, partnership and things like that. For the next couple of weeks, I'd say there will be a continuing focus on like Navy, oil, etc. And I think I mentioned that before, with some sort of imbalance where in one area you may have an overabundance of supplies, but then they can't really move through, or in another place you have a shortage and there is no adequate way of kind of delivering supplies there. But as I said, towards the end of the week and around the 21st, 22nd, 23rd of June, that may kind of change, and there may be some certainly increased focus on the area related to oil, pharmaceuticals, and things from that domain, again, Neptune domain. And let's see, there may also be increased focus on banks and finance, which of course we have, I guess, the Fed meeting coming up, and my prediction would be that they would not increase the rates, but there also would be, beyond that, kind of on a higher level, many countries may be again focusing on their own security and protecting sort of safety of their population, of their women, children, people in need, as well as food production. And that may have to do again with either perceived attacks on those areas or potentially some explosions, such as just mudslides or volcano explosions that may threaten, or the bad weather that may threaten crops. So somehow they may need to be protected, like the land itself may need to be protected from either some spill, poisoning, or some threat. Let's see, and for the U.S. ongoing predictions for the U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, that May, June look kind of difficult for her in terms of her health and being busy. I haven't heard anything dramatic about her, but whether it's sort of official or behind the scenes, definitely according to her horoscope, these look like very difficult months for her, and she may potentially end up either taking time off or stepping down. But again, I'm not necessarily saying that this will happen, but rather that at the very minimum things are difficult for her, and she may feel like overworked or overwhelmed, or potentially just somewhat in need of a timeout to attain to her health. And for China, ongoing kind of prediction, again, this is a long-term prediction for China again, where they may experience increased earthquakes or focus on oil, navy, pharmaceuticals, pollutions, various like secrets and deception and negotiations. There was indeed like a fairly, I would say 5, I think, something earthquake in China, but it may, during these critical times, like in June and September, it may manifest as an even kind of a stronger, more serious earthquake. So the potential is still there. So as far as the direction for the market, I think the market will primarily be going down the week of June 17th, except on Friday, I think it may turn up and then again end up going up also on the 23rd of June, the following Monday. So what else? Also increased market volatility regardless of the direction, because again, it's another strong sort of a week of strong aspects, and particularly like midweek, may really see some Tuesday, Wednesday, I guess Thursday, see some really strong kind of moves and tensions, increased tensions. June 17th, 18th, increased focus on military, weapons sales, aggressive negotiations, and engines of cars and airplanes. There may be increased news about like various problems or accidents due to engine malfunction, excessive winds, fires, explosions, overheating, something moving too fast. There may also be increased protests that involve young people, either clashes by, say, from young individuals like some, students against those who are considered to be kind of older, established leaders who are maybe less flexible or controlling and manipulative. Then they're also on the, like I said, 10th through 23rd, that's the ongoing prediction about kind of increased tensions and problems. And again, potentially bad news for leaders who are, especially those who are old or have some secrets, or they're spies, or they're dictators, or hackers, etc. So there may be also increased kind of dangerous circumstances for a larger number of people in general. Like I said, a large-scale disaster that affects many, and it may have to do with like nuclear power or mining, or something again that's underground, or has to do with ground, literally like shaking, tunnel collapsing, bridge collapsing, or some industrial disaster. So the probability through about the 23rd is quite high still. Then again, the 18th through 19th, so Tuesday, Wednesday, especially Wednesday around 9 a.m. New York time, the probability of a major earthquake is really high, or some sort of other attack, accidents, fire, or some serious announcement that have to do with either governments or corporations, some sort of a military campaign perhaps, or major agreements, or like a sale or deal that involves established large well-known corporations. There may also be increased clashes and protests, again most likely anti-government, anti-some corporation. And these tensions may get worse this week before they potentially gradually will get better after the 23rd of June, at least until through, I would say, for at least a few weeks, and September may see another big kind of flare-up. There may be attacks on leaders, as I said, or they may just kind of be old, step down on their own. And let's see, concerns about homeland security, bank savings, as well as steel, minerals, coal mining, and food production or safety, as well also women and motherhood. So those may be some topics that again may pop up in the news kind of more than usual. And again, so we're concerned about safety of women, safety of land, safety of food, safety of like savings in the bank, and also potentially, like I said, industries that use or produce steel, minerals, coal, and mining may also be affected. So those could be in more in the news the week of June 17th. However, at the same time, there may be some hopeful news about things like immigration or international negotiations. And again, that may be hopeful, as in like things may not have happened yet, but there may be just positive expectations, which may become kind of more realistic only sort of after August 12th. On Wednesday, I predict it might be the worst sort of day of the week, the most tense, the 19th, again, both due to potentially greater than usual probability of some sort of disaster, as well as I think the market may go down about 70-75% chance. Thursday, percent down, sort of chance percent down is 60-65, so also fairly high. And the mood may be similar on Thursday as on Tuesday, Wednesday. So again, stress, potentially some disasters, earthquakes, etc. But on Thursday, the additional sort of emphasis could be on IT, telecoms, aerospace, high tech, sort of computers, anything that's like really cool, electric cars and electricity in general, electric companies. And there's a greater than usual probability of those businesses experiencing some surprising kind of changes, surprising announcements. It doesn't have to be negative, but something that wasn't expected, and or some sudden problems, disruptions, or outages. And then on Friday, I think the market may actually go up, again on some optimism or hope, maybe about some sort of international agreement, or about deals that relate to immigration, or international affairs or long-term shipment, long-term long-distance shipment. So maybe the shipment was blocked of, say, oil or some chemical or something, and now finally it can go through. So there's, celebration related to that. At the same time, like I said, the businesses that relate to oil, pharmaceuticals, chemicals, and also like music, religion, etc., places that have sort of that energy, like places of worship, etc. Those places may experience some tensions where there may be just differences in values, so maybe protests again, or pro some sort of religious figure, or against or pro some movie. People just have radically different opinions whether some movie was really great, and that may have to do again with their sort of differing values, potentially religious values or values about culture, whether something was culturally acceptable, therefore it's great, let's celebrate that culture, or maybe it's completely unacceptable, again, because their culture would never permit that. And let's see, and so definitely, like I said, June 21st through 24th, a strong focus on oil, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, navy, drugs, etc. And there may be concerns about sort of the value of these products, because again, just disagreements in the value, but also maybe overabundance of some supply, where again it's accumulated too much in one place and not enough somewhere else, or disagreements among partners as to what should happen next. Like if there's a discussion among, say, OPEC leaders or something like that, they may not agree, because again, their values, their sort of desires and goals may be may not align, and so they may result in sort of oversupply and potentially the value of related products and businesses going down. So that's it for me for this week. I hope that this was enjoyable and not too long and boring, and that you can come back for more. You can also read my weekly predictions on my blog at tolstunka.com. I usually post it the day before I shoot this video, and so check it out, or come back and watch this video next week, and I'll see you all guys later. Bye.